Let's start with a story that I did not anticipate coming until about 4 hours before I found out it was happening, which is about this dude right here, Ryan Walters. He is a guy I've talked about so many times that you begin to think that this guy's always been a part of the political landscape, and he always would be. He is the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. He was elected to that a couple of years ago. But basically, he's the guy who runs public education in the state of Oklahoma, which might be great if he cared at all about public education, but he never has. And I will tell you how I know that in just a little bit. But the big news that came out Wednesday night this week is that Ryan Walters is going to resign from his post. Did not see that coming. Oklahoma's long educational nightmare is finally maybe coming to an end if they're lucky. But basically, what happened here, and I wish I could play the clip for you, but it was on Fox News, so I really can't, is that Ryan Walters went on Fox News because that's where you announce things if you're a Republican. And he told them he was going to quit his job in order to become the CEO of a group called the Teacher Freedom Alliance. And don't let the name confuse you. Like a lot of right-wing groups like Alliance Defending Freedom, it's always like the opposite of whatever they actually say. Focus on the family. They don't care about your family. They just want you to be like them, right? So the Teacher Freedom Alliance is an entire group that exists to destroy public education and teachers' unions. That's what he's going to do. He's going to run this group whose entire mission is to destroy teachers' unions. So, yeah, that seems like where he's always wanted to go. And no one really knew this was going to happen until, like I said, just a couple hours before he made that announcement. And you have to wonder, how much money did this group say they were going to pay him to be their CEO for him to leave a job that probably paid less as a government official, but definitely had more power that he used extensively? And I really don't know what it was that made him want to ditch his job to go take this. Because money is one thing, but that money would always be waiting for him. Because if you're a Republican in politics, you can only ever fail upward, right? So it's not like he would have not had any job possibilities if he decided to just end his term or if he lost an election. I also wonder, there were rumors swirling, was this guy going to run for re-election next year? Was he going to run for governor instead? And by taking this job, it makes you wonder, does that mean those things are now off the table? Does it mean he saw polling that suggested he wasn't going to win the Republican primaries in either of those races? And he decided, what's a way I can quit without losing? And this makes it look like, nope, this is my decision all along, and it had nothing to do with the fact that I was going to be embarrassed a year from now. I don't know the answer to that. But anyway, as soon as he announced it on Fox News, his group was ready to go. This is what they posted on X/Twitter. Teacher Freedom Alliance is proud to welcome Ryan Walters as our incoming CEO. Ryan Walters fearlessly fights the woke liberal union mob, which is a sentence that makes absolutely no sense. You think unions are woke? My God, no, they're not. You think they're a mob? They're teachers. They're like art teachers. I promise you, they do not have the wherewithal to be part of a mob. And there's nothing fearless about the guy. He's weak. He's a coward. He just has power. He's very much like Trump and Vance. It's not that they're great fighters. It's that they just are in positions to do a lot of damage. No one's afraid of them. They're afraid of what they're going to do because they're cowards. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's what this group announced. And everything they did is like, hey, we just hired this guy. Give us money. So I'm sure that's the reason they wanted him hired. But anyway, this may be the best possible news for the state of Oklahoma. And look, who's going to replace Ryan Walters for the next year and a half? It's going to be someone appointed by the current governor, Kevin Stitt, who is Republican. Who's he going to nominate to take over Ryan Walters' job? I don't know yet, but it will probably be someone who's a Republican, used to be in the legislature, maybe someone who Stitt gets along with. Stitt and Ryan Walters were not buddies. Maybe they were at one point, but they very much did not get along, which means if you're Kevin Stitt and you want a future in the Republican Party after you are term limited out, you probably want to replace Ryan Walters with someone who is fine for your conservative base, but won't embarrass you on a regular basis. And if you have someone who, even as a bare minimum, actually cares about education, they will be better off than they are right now. So I will say harming schools is the job Ryan Walters has always wanted to do in his political life. And it is so much better for everybody that he's no longer going to be able to do it as the superintendent of public instruction, but as some random CEO of a group that no one really has to pay attention to. Because, like any nonprofit group, you can totally ignore them if you want to. So that's the good news. Before I tell you more about Ryan Walters' future, let me remind you of why he's such an odious person and why everyone, including Oklahomans, should be very happy to see this guy gone. Okay, this is a guy, Ryan Walters, who tried to purchase Trump Bibles for public schools, didn't get the $6 million he wanted to buy all those Bibles, and then ended up sending a few hundred to AP government teachers, who, as I've explained in the past, are the teachers who need outside textbooks the least. By the way, you may have seen this TikTok that appeared, I think it was this week, from an AP government teacher who said, I just got this Trump Bible from Ryan Walters, and it doesn't include most of the amendments, including the ones like the 13th, 14th, and 15th, ending slavery and talking about, all the post-Reconstruction, the Reconstruction amendments, things like that. So that's one thing he did. Ryan Walters, as I mentioned last week, he rewrote the social studies standards to indoctrinate children in right-wing conspiracy theories and Jesus. He got the state's Board of Education. He basically bullied them into approving those standards without telling them he had made additional changes without letting them know. He got sued over it. And then recently, the Oklahoma Supreme Court stepped in to block those standards from going into effect while they decide what they want to do with this. By the way, now that Ryan Walters is resigning, I don't know what happens with that lawsuit. I assume you can continue because it's not really about him. It's about the standards. But right now, that's one thing he tried to do. He tried to use public money to support a religious Catholic charter school. He wanted public money to pay for a private Catholic, a Catholic charter school, which would have been the first religious charter school in the country. The Oklahoma Supreme Court said that was unconstitutional, and the U.S. Supreme Court was asked to weigh in on it, and they voted 4-4, and so it didn't matter what they said. The original decision stood. So failure from Ryan Walters whenever he tries to do these culture war battles, but he's wasting a lot of people's time and energy and money. What else has he done? Despite a teacher shortage throughout Oklahoma, in the past couple of months, Ryan Walters said, well, if you're a teacher who wants to work in Oklahoma, but you're coming from a place like California, I'm going to make you take a special test to test your wokeness. It's called the America First test. And basically, as I explained, it was nothing more than a publicity stunt for the right-wing group PragerU. No one could possibly get anything less than 100 on that test because you literally couldn't choose the wrong answer if you tried. He also sued an atheist group, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, for warning public schools, two of them, that they needed to follow the law and not push religion on kids. And both of those school districts said, yes, you are correct. We need to stop doing that. And that's all that happened. And Ryan Walters tried to sue them for warning the schools that they were breaking the law. A judge later tossed out Ryan Walters' lawsuit because he's really dumb. So there's that. Really quickly, what else has he done? He tried forcing teachers to make the Bible part of the curriculum. That's before the standards thing. He tried to put Christian chaplains in public schools. He tried to mandate displays of the Ten Commandments in those schools. He said the Tulsa Race Massacre, which is big in Oklahoma, had nothing to do with race. News to everybody. He falsely claimed that President Joe Biden wanted to destroy our Christian faith. He formed a faith committee to examine prayer in public schools. He appointed that troll woman who runs Libs of TikTok to a statewide library advisory board so they could all ban books together. He sent out a sample prayer to teachers so they could use it for the people of Israel and definitely not anyone living in Gaza. But it's not just all this culture war stuff. He upset Republicans too. Because most Republicans, at least in Oklahoma, the MAGA cultists are on board with everything I just told you. But he made Republicans mad too. They said he was withholding $150 million for school security. He was just holding on to it and not giving it to the schools, even though the legislature had already passed a bill giving those schools that money. They claimed he was hiding information about how he spent taxpayer dollars for his office's travel budget, because Ryan Walters is jet setting off to all these right-wing conferences on the taxpayer dime, and then he wouldn't tell anyone where he was going and not handing over the records for that stuff. They said he wasn't fulfilling open records requests in a timely manner. They said, this is the kicker for me, they said he was refusing to spend money they had already allocated for asthma inhalers for students. So they were so mad at him, they wanted to do an investigation to impeach Ryan Walters, but they just didn't have the votes to pull it off. Because again, Republicans. And it got to the point where even the Trump administration and Governor Kevin Stitt wanted very little to do with him. And this is very interesting from an article from the digital outlet I don't know if it's Notice or Not Us. I think it's Notice. But check this out. This is what they said after he announced his retirement. Walters has been increasingly absent from Oklahoma's education world. In August, Education Secretary Linda McMahon excluded him from a meeting when she visited Oklahoma, which is interesting to me because that's the job he wanted to have. And Trump didn't give it to him. He gave it to the wrestling lady. He also developed a pattern of skipping Oklahoma Board of Education meetings. You have one job. What are you doing? In late July, school board members alleged they saw naked women on a television in his office during a meeting, which his office downplayed. I will go ahead and say it appears there was a rational explanation for why adult content was on his computer. I've explained it in another video. It was not him watching that stuff. But as I also said at the time, if that was the only scandal involved with Ryan Walters we were talking about, it would really not be a big deal. It was just funny because of the supposed hypocrisy. But again, I will say Ryan Walters did not do that one. Anyway, Walters did not show up for the first state school board meeting since that incident was reported, so the board carried out the meeting without him. So, he's not even doing his main job. All he wants to do these days is say and do dumb shit on Twitter so that the people at Fox are paying attention so that they will bring him on. I mean, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. This guy wanted to announce his retirement. He did not issue a press release. He did not send a letter to the governor and then make an announcement. He called up some producer at Fox and said, I need to appear on your channel because I have some news. And the reason I can say that is because if you watch the segment where he said it, the host is like, we're asking you about something else you did. But by the way, we heard you have some breaking news to share with us. They knew in advance why he wanted to appear on their channel. So that's Ryan Walters for you. And by the way, the reason he wanted to appear on Fox, besides breaking that news, is because he just announced that every high school in the state of Oklahoma is definitely going to have a chapter of Turning Point USA in honor of Charlie Kirk. But that makes no sense. One, because Ryan Walters does not have the authority to jam a club into every high school in the state of Oklahoma. Like, how is he going to do that? That doesn't make any sense. On the flip side, if any students wanted to start a chapter of Turning Point, they can already do it. If your school allows extracurricular clubs, then you just got to follow whatever the school's rules are to get it started. And in some cases, it might be you need 3 students who are willing to join your club and a faculty sponsor who will supervise you when you're having meetings. And if you overcome those very, very small hurdles, you get to have your after school club. So every school could already have those clubs if they wanted, but Ryan Walters is like, let me do you all a favor. I'm going to make sure it happens, which is not a thing he could do. He was lying about that. Um, but again, it just shows you everything he does is to score political points. Notice that everything I just told you, none of that stuff helps kids get better. None of that stuff educates them. None of it makes them smarter. None of it gives them a better chance to get into the college of their choice if that's what they choose to do. It's all about Ryan Walters getting to cosplay as a culture warrior because that's what he wanted to do. Anyway, yesterday, as I'm making this live stream on Wednesday, a couple of news outlets reported that Walters could be resigning very soon. And they said he was going to possibly go work with a group called the Freedom Foundation, which is a far right anti labor union group. Walters has previously compared teachers' unions to terrorist organizations, just to give you an idea of how much he respects teachers. But anyway, later on, it was confirmed that he's working with the Teacher Freedom Alliance, which, guess what? It is an offshoot of the Freedom Foundation. So the early rumblings were correct. And so what does all this mean? It means that a far right politician is going to be working for a far right group. So, match made in hell. And one of the reasons you knew he was actually going to resign is because he was weirdly quiet on social media yesterday. He usually will come in with a zinger, whatever he thinks Trump might appreciate. He was just retweeting a couple things, but he was otherwise silent. So you knew something was up. When one reporter asked his office for comment, they said nothing, which is also weird because usually when an actual reporter contacts his office, they respond, whatever, you're fake news. I don't have to respond to you. They didn't even do that. So here's what I'm wondering now. Even if he's CEO of this group, will he still decide to run for governor? I don't know. Is he trying to get the stench of how shitty of a job he's done? Is he trying to get that stench off of him for a little bit by going to this group, making a little bit of money? At which point, early next year, after a few months, after someone else cleans up some of the mess he made, maybe he comes back and starts saying, I should be governor now. Is that what he's trying to do? Is that the long game here? I don't know. And now I'm wondering, how much cash does it take to make you go away forever? Because apparently one bag of cash is enough to make him leave his current position. I don't know who Governor Kevin Stitt's going to appoint to replace him, but it's hard to imagine how anybody could be worse. And Kevin Stitt does not seem to like the Ryan Walters show that was going on. So you have to think he's not going to appoint someone who wants to turn the entire state education system into a personal vehicle to promote himself. So we'll see about that. But by abandoning his job to go take this other job, Ryan Walters is confirming what people like me have been saying about him for years, which is that educating kids was never his priority. He is not interested in public education. He definitely is not interested in helping kids. He's interested in destroying the public education system. He thinks the biggest enemies he faces on a day-to-day basis are teachers. That's this guy. His only loyalty is to like national right-wing propaganda outlets and the demagogues who spread division. And his whole thing has been, I'm going to promote misinformation and disinformation. I'm going to pretend to be a victim. And then all of you, you Newsmax viewers, you will love me. And maybe you will hire me for millions of dollars. So Oklahoma has a chance right now to do something very good, which is appoint somebody who cares about education. Maybe someone with actual experience running an administration, running a school district, caring about kids. And the weird thing is, Ryan Walters used to be a public school teacher. And as far as I can tell, he was a very good, very popular public school teacher. But as soon as he decided to go into politics, he became a totally different person. Like the MAGA cultism of it all just brainwashed this dude. And he became a complete monster to everyone who works with this guy or has to work with this guy. I hope Oklahoma can get someone responsible to take a spot. I hope they can recenter the conversation about what actually matters, which is investing in teachers, creating safe and well-resourced schools, giving students a well-rounded education that's not based on religious bullshit like Ryan Walters wanted. And I feel like if Ryan Walters, if you take away the guy whose whole thing is, I'm going to file lawsuits and do publicity stunts and issue press releases to boost myself, maybe the state can start repairing some of that damage. One, like US News, if that's still a thing, they rank Oklahoma 48 in the nation when it comes to education. There are other outlets that rank them 50. And none of that was ever going to improve while Ryan Walters was in charge. Maybe now they can aim high and try to get to 47 by the end of next year. Who knows? But at least this clears the path for a future where education comes first and not a grown man's ego. So we can hope. All right, I will stop there with Ryan Walters. What questions do we have about him, about any of this? Thank you, Carla, for the donation. Get a pizza on me to celebrate Ryan Walters being gone. Thank you for all you do. You know what's funny? I recorded my podcast with my co-host yesterday afternoon, and we didn't know any of this was going to happen. And we taped it all, and after we got back home, that's when the rumors began circulating. So I feel bad that my co-host did not get a chance to enjoy this in front while we were recording in front of everybody. Here's to better days ahead for Oklahoma schools. Yep, absolutely. And those teachers have been through so much. They've protested so much. Their students deserve so much better than what the state's Republicans have given them. As an Oklahoman, I'm relieved Ryan Walters is leaving. Yay! I really don't understand, and I thank you for that comment. I really don't understand why he's taking this job. It is not a more powerful, it's not like, let's say someone became the head of the ACLU, just to name a big nonprofit. That group has a track record. Everyone knows what that group is. So if you become the head of that group, or you become the head of Planned Parenthood or the NRA, you have a very large pulpit from which to say whatever it is you want to say. But the group Walters is joining is relatively new. They don't really have a track record. I'm sure he's like their big celebrity get. So maybe now they will. But like, I don't know why people would be listening to him, because who cares what this group does? It's one of a bajillion nonprofit groups, and they all have things to say about education, and some of them are worth listening to, some of them are not. But again, I don't know why this guy would give up the megaphone that he has to do this, and I don't know how much money they would have to pay him to do that unless it's part of a long game for something else, like running for governor or something like that. But that also means he's not running on his record as superintendent. Don't you suspect he's running from consequences? I wish that would be true, but what would the consequences be? Unless you think even Republican voters in the state were not going to reelect this guy as superintendent of public instruction, and they probably would not elect him in a primary to be governor. You have to remember, one of the people running for governor as a Republican is the current attorney general, who has been, weirdly, despite him being like a MAGA cultist as well, he has also been for church state separation. That guy is probably the front runner for that seat. And so I don't know that he's running from consequences. Maybe he's trying to run from the embarrassment of knowing he is going to lose those primaries, if that's what he thinks is going to happen. But if that's the case, like, I don't know, is he running from the consequences or just trying to get in front of something that might shatter that armor that he wants people to think he has? My kid's district is one of the ones that did not have a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk. He said he would investigate us and the 11 others because, yeah, of course, it is now required in Oklahoma that everyone has to honor this new Christian martyr who said a lot of very horrible things in his life. What happened to him is bad. He also said some very racist, bigoted stuff. But when you think about it, there was a school shooting that same day that Charlie Kirk was killed. Ryan Walters did not say, hold a moment of silence for the kids who were killed in that school shooting. I bet Ryan Walters has no idea who got killed in that school shooting. I think it was in Colorado or something like that. But, like, you know what I'm saying? But no, because he wants to score political points, not only did he want to take a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk, which is his right, but he forced every high school to do it, every school to do it. And like Anitra is saying here, if your school didn't, he's like, well, then I'm going to come after you. It's utterly stupid what Ryan Walters is doing. What teacher would want to head up a hate club, though? Man, I got to tell you something about teachers. There are plenty of teachers who have no problem supporting a conservative group or a Christian club or anything like that because they don't see them as hate clubs. By and large, by the way, high school turning point groups, high school Christian clubs are not hate groups. They're just kids who are probably very unpopular who want to get together and say things that their friends don't like them for saying. But I will say there are also teachers who may disagree with them, who will say, look, if all you need is a faculty sponsor, I'll be your faculty sponsor because I believe kids should have the right to form these clubs and have these discussions if that's what you plan to do. So it's not that conservative teachers don't exist. But again, if I don't think the lack of a faculty sponsor is the reason more of these clubs don't exist. It's because a lot of students just don't care or don't want to start these groups. They have better things to do. Honestly, I think people would be better off if more high school kids were part of any club